Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one-size-fits-all protocols, just real answers, deep-rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now on to our show. And good morning, Mint.
Good morning.
Not even sure what time it is over there, but morning where I am.
It's my afternoon, but we could pretend it's morning. I mean, the
That's
sun's
fine.
out.
Well, I'm so excited you're here. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation and one that, I mean, truthfully, just isn't talked about a whole lot. Mint is a somatic sexologist and pleasure-focused sex educator, and she really helps women and couples around the whole world reconnect to their body, explore their sexuality, and build a relationship with pleasure that feels safe, empowered, and fully their own. So I'm so curious to dive into all of these different topics. But first, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and, a little bit of your story on how you got into this line of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to be here, Shannon, and thank you for the intro. So I grew up in the Middle East, and I think pleasure is not spoken about often around the world, right? Like recently you get some sex education here and there, but when it comes to pleasure education, it's kind of like a lonely road where you figure it out and you stumble here and there, right? And so, um, especially where I grew up, even the word sex was like a shh, like don't say that. And so I've been always curious and I would always research, read different books, ask questions. Generally speaking, the topic was something that was really interesting for me. And what I realized when I arrived to university and I traveled abroad was that something called an orgasm existed. And I didn't know what that was. I'd never heard about it. Like my girlfriends, nobody used to talk about self pleasure. Nobody talks about orgasms. I didn't know what that was. And I was like, oh, guys, for sure I felt it. You know, if all my girlfriends have felt it, I must have too. And yeah, it didn't take us too long to discover that I hadn't experienced an orgasm. And so we embarked on like this 10-year journey of sending me all the updated research and diving into geeking out. I mean, like on the inside, I'm a true nerd, geeking out on all the updated research, which is very recent on the pleasure of the human body and specifically for women, right? And so when I hit 27 years old, I was like, that's it. I better get there before I'm 30 years old. And you know what? I looked at the industry and I realized that everyone in the industry didn't really, I didn't feel like anyone really looked like me, not in sense of appearance, but I didn't feel like anyone could really understand where it was that I grew up. And I didn't know what was creating blocks and bumps in the road. And so I decided, you know what? I'm pretty sure this has something to do with my upbringing and the way that I was brought up. I'm pretty sure my anatomy works perfectly fine. And just going to jump in and I'm going to study the whole thing professionally, and I'm going to study it professionally just to help myself.
That's so interesting. I mean, can you dive a little bit more into this? Because there's, when you work with Middle Eastern and different cultures, I mean, that there is almost a taboo, like a little bit more. I'm sure, obviously, in other cultures there are as well, but this primarily the population you work with, right?
Yeah, well, the population that I work with primarily are people who grew up either like in a conservative family or a conservative environment. I mean, I have clients from India, I have clients from the Eastern Europe, I have clients from the US as well, right? But um, I feel like what I specialize in and what I'm really good at is working with people who, generally speaking, grew up in cultures with a lot of scripts, whether that was just like in their family dynamic or in the religious dynamic or in the regional dynamic, whatever is in their environment that wasn't it or created fear around sex or guilt around sex or shame around sex and pleasure. That's kind of like my specialty and my dive in. I'm good at that stuff.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. Now, what are the biggest things you see around, your work when people come to you, kind of wanting, what do they primarily come wanting, and what are the biggest blocks
Yeah.
you see around that?
So I'm going to split that question into two. I'm going to focus on women, the common issues that they have, and then I'm going to focus on couples, common issues that they have.
Mm.
And so with women, usually it's, I can't let go. I really want to, but I can't let go.
Mhm.
I don't know why. I love him so much, but my desire is just not happening. I don't feel like I want it all the time anymore, and I don't know what's going on there.
Mm.
An ability to orgasm alone, but a struggle to orgasm with a partner.
Mm.
And then specifically for the Middle East, a lot of struggle with penetration, with in, successful sexual intercourse, and with like feeling pain during penetration. These are kind of the main ones when I work with women one on one. Now, when I work with couples, the most common thing is a desire discrepancy. This feeling that maybe the eroticism has died out, that for some weird reason, although they're fond of one another, they're not getting between the sheets anymore. Play is not happening there anymore. And that's usually the top one that I get, this discrepancy. Um, and the interesting thing about this is that most couples feel like they need to come to me to like spice up their sex life. We're gonna do these 10 new moves, learn these 5 new techniques, shop those 3 new items, and lingerie, sex toys, boom, fire is gonna happen. And it's really interesting because a lot of the time what I do is I look at what turns them off in life. What are the things that turn you off? Because if you have a child and you didn't get much sleep and you're running around all day and you're exhausted, then yeah, highly likely you're not going to feel all fired up to get in bed with someone and play, right? And that's what sex is for us. Sexual pleasure is adult play. It's our way of playing.
Huh. That's so funny. I mean, yeah, that's so true. Speaking from somebody who has a toddler and doesn't always sleep. It's, I obviously work with a lot of women on their health, and a libido is a huge, huge issue. I don't dive so deep into it, but it is something that's important that we talk about because it's like you can do all of the tricks if you want, but if you're still highly stressed out, it's
Yeah.
gonna be difficult. Or, a big thing with women is not speaking up for what they want, not just in
Hmm.
sex, but also just in life in general. And that
Yeah.
shows up, with your partner too, right?
Absolutely. And I think you just touched on something super interesting here because a lot of the time when people start thinking about their libido going down, they start thinking maybe it's hormonal, maybe there's like something that they need to eat or consume and or stress is definitely a big factor. But what's more interesting is to want sex again and again, it has to be sex worth wanting.
Mm.
The quality of the sex that you're having is great, you're going to make the time. It's the same way that you really go out of your way to pick up that one dessert, that one chocolate that you really, really enjoy. But if it was like a mediocre whatever chocolate, you wouldn't go back and or go out of your way to go grab it, right? And it's the same with spending time with friends as well. If spending time with your friends feels like a 5 out of 10, um, you won't invest in it so much unless it was really like a friend that you have so much fun with, then you'll prioritize that and create space for it. And here's the interesting thing is that especially when you're in long-term relationship where the couple's committed for a long time, there's this deep sensitivity as well around not saying something that's going to hurt the other person or make them feel like they're not performing well enough in bed, or that they're not good enough, or that you're not satisfied enough. It's really hard to just walk up to your partner and say, hey, I don't think the sex we're having is sex that's worth wanting, and that's why I don't really feel like I want to have more of it, right? That's kind of like a boom, wow. Woo, let's not say that. And so it's interesting because a lot of the time when I work with couples, step one is let's look at all the stuff that's not really, that's getting in your way of desire, right? And like getting in the way of you feeling sexy and hot and all that kind of stuff. Step number two is let's look at the quality of the sex that you're having and what you'd like to have. And the way that someone initiates with you makes a difference. Your sex language and the way that you like to play makes a difference as well. And that's why I take the parallel of play, because it was totally normal when we were younger to go like, okay, you want to play with board games, but I want to go on the swings. Maybe we shouldn't be friends. Maybe we don't want to play the same way, right? And then you switch to another friend who wants to play in the same way. So if you take that parallel into the bedroom, a lot of the time, what I find is that, especially with women, they haven't really taken the time or had a menu to work through to even find out what it is that they enjoy, how it is that they want to play. And you know what? The older you get, you change. And with that, the way that you want to have sex changes, and what feels good changes. And part of my work with couples, which I feel is essential, is just really like redefining what sex means, right? Because sometimes you're up for someone cuddling, maybe some erotic touch on the body, maybe some erotic massage and, sensual touch, but you might not be up for like, oh my God, we're going to take all my clothes off, go to the bedroom, lock the door, and then it feels like a whole production. And we might not be up for a production every single day, but we definitely could be up for mini appetizers, or like this long stretch of multiple days of foreplay where we still get to connect in an erotic way. I don't know. I just feel like it's so limiting when we define sex as penis inside vagina. Boom, and that's it, right? So a lot of the time it's also like expanding the pleasure menu and just seeing like, what is this? What's here? It's kind of like ordering sushi the first time. When you order sushi for the first time, you don't know what the hell's on the menu, and you kind of just want to go with let's go for California, that looks very simple, looks really easy, right? Um, but then as you start to explore, you get a little bit more adventurous, and then you're doing like the tempuras and the sashimis and the nigiris, and whoa, like you're trying stuff that you've never tried before. But yeah, the first time you look at the sushi menu, you don't know what the hell's there. And I feel like for sexual pleasure, most of the time, we don't even have a menu for that. We don't even know what that is. It's either like the crazy stuff or the super basic, and that's it. But there's a whole range of colors on the spectrum in between. Yeah.
That's the California roll now. Hysterical.
Right?
What do you find spices things up kind of the most? Not just in the bed, like outside of that as well.
Well, if I were to answer that question with complete transparency and honesty, it would be presence.
Mm, that's a
Presence.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Feeling seen, and it's a two-way thing, right? It's so easy for a couple, especially when they've been together for a long time and when they're living in the same space, to kind of almost feel like they're just passing each other by. But what
Mhm.
I find is a super turn on is when someone feels like their partner's attention is on them, that they are there, that they hear what they're saying, that they can really see them and be present with them and are not distracted by anything else, whether it's the phone, Netflix, TV, a work call, just being there. The second thing that I find is that, um, well, fire needs air, right? Fire needs air to be able to actually ignite. And so I find that when our partners are at a slight distance from us, we find them attractive when we take a step back and see our partners in their element, when they're doing something that they're really good at, and they're not just like up here in our face, and we don't get desensitized to how amazing they are, right? Like when you get to see your partner at a distance, that's incredible. And so a lot of the time, I think this isn't even just valid for and true for your erotic life with someone, but just like generally speaking, um, you find that lots of people get into relationships and then their friends drop like flies, and then their hobbies are no longer scheduled in, and the things they used to enjoy are not there, and life becomes heavily bombarded with obligation and nights on the couch watching the TV and scrolling on the phone, and way less of, well, what attracted me to you was seeing you in your element doing all those things, and suddenly you're with somebody who's not that person anymore. And so I find that filling up our lives with things that fulfill us, things that make us feel sexy about ourselves, also creates time where we are nourishing ourselves and not necessarily just passing by our partners or just coexisting mindlessly in the same space as our partners. And when that happens, I believe that also creates the space where fire needs air. That's like the air that's being created so we can actually light the fire up.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. It makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense. I mean, that's something I hear actually from a lot of clients too, right? Um,
yeah,
is that lack of presence, attention.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Now, well, I guess not switching gears, keeping on the same gears, but on this podcast, I have a lot of people that have talked about somatic work, right?
Hmm.
And many different avenues. And, I've never heard it really, although it makes a ton of sense, a somatic sexologist. Can you talk a little
Yeah,
bit about what that is
yeah.
and why that's so important?
Yeah, let me simplify the word somatic here, because I definitely feel like it's becoming a very popular approach across multiple disciplines. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it feels like nobody really knows how to put their finger on it and explain it. And so let's think of it this way. What somatic work does is it places the mind and the body on the same page.
Mhm.
A lot of the time, what I hear is, if I bring it back to the context of sexual pleasure, a lot of the time, what I hear is, I really want to let go. I really want to be more turned on. I really want to try, like, I want this, but it's just, my body is not responding. It's just not happening. And so you see the mind is on one page where it wants something, where it's like, come on, get there. And then the body is somewhere else completely. And so the practice of somatic techniques and practices, what it does, it aligns the body and the mind, and it makes sure that both of them are on the same page. Okay, great. Now we know what somatic work does. How does it do that? So here's how it does that. Somatic work is basically different practices and techniques. So when you work with a somatic practitioner, it's almost as if you're creating your own little toolbox. And that practitioner's job is kind of like an art, because like the tools and the techniques are scientific. They're scientifically based. But the art is for the practitioner themselves to be really great at linking those up together. Which techniques and which tools are appropriate for my client, this specific client, in this specific moment of time in this journey to reach this goal. And so, as a client or a patient, what you're creating is you're creating this little toolbox of different practices. Now, these practices, generally speaking, are practices that are mindful, that the body and mind are connected. They're not purely physical, so it's not like physiotherapy that primarily just focuses on the physical, or exercise that focuses on the physical. And it's not psychological like your traditional therapy is, that primarily focuses on the mind and the cognitive side and the psychology of things. It is a link between both. It's a holistic approach that is like that takes into account that the body has consciousness and is alive. And basically, in my sessions, with the exception of the first session, which is an in-depth intake session where we do a lot of talking and a little bit of somatic work, most of my sessions, the maximum talking we'll do will maybe be like 15 minutes at most, because the rest of the time we're actually doing these techniques and practices. And the more you do these techniques and practices, the more you'll able to reach that goal, whether it's being able to expand pleasure in the body or to access pleasure easier in the body, or to find out, what kind of touch, where feels good in the body. It depends on what we're working with, or even if it's healing work where there's a sensation of pain, or, I enjoy it so much during, but then I feel so much guilt and shame after, or I get distracted and, I'm trying to tell myself to stay present and be here, but then I find myself staring at the ceiling going like, well, we need to clean this. Did I lock the door? Does this angle feel nice? I hope I still smell good. It's a little bit hot here. Is it too soon for me to be having sex with this guy? And you find that happens and you're telling your mind, shh, stay in the body. And so doing those practices help you reach your goal. How does that sound as an explanation?
I mean, that was awesome. I mean, so well done. Kudos. Because you're right. I mean, this word gets tossed around a lot, and people don't really understand what it means or why it's important, so many people I feel like start with this end goal in mind and don't understand the whole role holistic. We hear holistic too, especially in my line of work, but it's like
Yeah,
holistic, what does that mean? Like you have to understand how the body and the mind kind of co-create everything. So, no, very good.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I'd be
And
curious. Go ahead.
I'm just going to squeeze a quick thing in.
Hmm.
The one thing that I personally like about somatic work is that sex is a dance that is done with the body, right? Sex is not a conversational thing. And so for me personally, my personal experience, I found that somatic sexology was a very appropriate medium, because the way that I was being treated, the way that I was doing this therapeutic work or learning was exactly in the same dimension and in the same way that you actually practice having sex. It's not separate. And I find that the results are pretty fast, which is a bonus. It actually works and it's quick. Awesome. Yeah,
No, that's a good little tidbit to throw in there.
yeah, yeah.
I would love for you to just tap on a few client experiences you've had, kind of when they came to you and versus when they left.
So I'm going to grab one of my most um, common client experiences, which is the following. Um, Here's what I always hear in the intake: I want to be free. I want to feel like my body is mine. I want to feel like I can let go and nothing is holding me back. I constantly feel like there's something holding me back. I want to become unapologetically, erotically free. This word freedom comes out often. And it is very common where there's also like a physical pain with penetration. Because, like I said, I primarily work with people in conservative cultures and in the Middle East, and that's very common.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because the marker usually is, well, now I don't feel pain and now I've succeeded, right? But as we start doing the work and as we start working together, so many doors open up, and the intention goes from, I don't want to feel the pain anymore. I want to feel like my body is mine. I want to feel free to have sex whenever I want without it being painful. And just getting rid of that pain would be really amazing, because I'll feel like connecting with my partner is not a painful thing and receiving my partner is not a painful thing, right? And it goes from there to completely changing fundamental beliefs in their system. And that looks like understanding what a yes, no, and maybe feels like in the body. And if you understand what a yes, no, and maybe feels like in the body on a sexual level, in a very intimate setting, I can only explain how much that shifts things in other places in their lives. You really get that feeling of like complete body autonomy. When you trust yourself enough and develop a relationship with yourself enough to be able to let go, because in feeling pleasure, you need to slow down. And in feeling pleasure, you need to be totally present. And in feeling pleasure, there is this sense of like letting go. And so it's so nice to see people surrender to feeling good. And then how much that shows up in their life when they're able to, first of all, surrender to life and not fight life so hard anymore. Second of all, surrender to actually enjoying a moment fully, whether that's sitting down outside in the sun and feeling the wind and the sun on their skin and really enjoying their ice creams and no longer gulping their food down because now they know how to enjoy simple pleasures in life, like taking a slow shower, you know? Um, or if it looks like actually being able to receive. I can't begin to explain how many women, and because I work primarily with like cisgendered heterosexual couples, I can't explain how many women struggle with just like spreading their legs, relaxing their back, and enjoying some really good head, you know? Or, yeah, they're just like, I just feel this feeling like I need to get up. Like I need to do something. I can't just go and be able to receive. And if you're able to receive in this very vulnerable, intimate moment where your panties off and someone's between your legs, then you're able to receive in other places in life as well. And you're able to receive help, and you're able to receive support, and you're able to receive all these other gifts as well. And it's interesting because it actually is also a point of pain for their partners too, where their partners come up to me and they're like, I want her to have fun. I don't want her to do this out of obligation. I want this to be something that we enjoy together, the two of us. And like, just if she just tells me what to do, like, I mean, I'll do it, you know? And it is a point of pain because I'm sitting here and all I'm thinking as a practitioner is, and a therapist is, she doesn't know how to receive. And most of the time, she doesn't know what she wants. She's never taken the time to know what she wants, which brings me to my final thought
Yeah.
around this, which is I've heard so many women walk in and say, I just don't feel connected to my sexuality, myself, my vulva, my body, my vagina. They definitely walk out connected. But I've never, and I'm yet to feel, to find a man who says, I just don't feel very connected to my penis. Like, I don't know what's going on. Every man knows every single inch of his penis, knows how it works, how it doesn't work, what's super sensitive, what isn't. But us as women, we definitely haven't spent too much time exploring ourselves inside and out and how that makes us feel in general. We're kind of like, here you go, here's my hard drive. Just, you know, play with whatever and let's see what happens. So, yeah,
Oh, that's so true. That's hysterical, actually. Um,
yeah.
but makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you could give a piece of advice, like, I mean, you've given so many little tidbits, but one or two big pieces of advice for, let's say, a woman kind of wanting to explore this a little bit more, wanting to, deepen their sexuality and, pleasure, like what would be that little tidbit you'd give?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to split that question into two again. Clearly, I like to do that. Here's what I'm going to say. So, to people who are just, and this is to everybody, man, woman, couples, partnered, unpartnered, whatever. If you are starting a new sexual relationship with another person, my number one advice is just be honest. Be honest with your reactions. If something feels good, moan, breathe harder, move your body in waves, show and communicate that it does feel good. And if something doesn't feel good, Pause, stop making sounds, awkward silence, partner's got it. Okay, got it. Yeah, that's not the way to go. Because the last thing that you want is to not communicate honestly with your body. You don't need to talk too much. It's to not communicate honestly, and then your partner's like, "Woo, she loves this. He loves that," and it's like you've just set up yourself for failure. So I think that's like my number one piece of advice for people who are starting a new sexual relationship with somebody else. Now, if you're already in a sexual relationship with someone and it's been a while, what I'd say is take a step back and just look at your life. And there's a little exercise that you can actually do. It's called the context worksheet. And um, Emily Nagalski has it on her website for free. And my team's created a really cool Middle Eastern version of it. And what that helps is it helps you find out what turns you on and what turns you off in life, you know, that helps you create more interesting erotic experiences. And what I'd say is take a step back and just look at all the stuff that you do in life that turns you off and doesn't make you feel so juicy and doesn't make you feel so great. And just think like, what are 1 to 3 changes that I can make, even if it's just like one day where you have a little bit more space to connect with your own self. Because if your relationship with your sexuality isn't fed and isn't being nourished, and it can be fed by just, you know, putting oil on your body or taking like a really nice shower, going and like getting groomed, you know, like whatever it is can make you feel really, really good, then definitely take a moment to do that. And for specifically for couples who have been, now I'm giving like a third piece of advice, but specifically for couples who have been together for a long time, the best thing you can do is just set time that is sacred, that is non negotiable, where you guys are present together. Intimate time. And when I say intimacy, I don't mean we're going to take all our clothes off, but it's time where we are here to connect. This half an hour, this 1 hour a week, this one day a week is just a day where our phones are on the side, where we're not distracted by anybody or anything on the planet. And it's sacred time where the two of us can connect. And for people who say they're too busy and life is too blah, 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 whatever, well, I'm just going to say that when you are in an important meeting, the people in your meeting have your undivided attention. When you're in therapy, you don't pause therapy to pick up the phone and answer a call. And when you're doing your workout for an hour in the morning, a few times a week, you really set the time for that. And that's one of the best things that you can do to create environments and opportunities where you can feel closer to your partner and potentially have great sex. Potentially.
I love all of those. And, I think this is really um enlightening for a lot of people. And so I really appreciate your insights, and I'm sure we could talk for a whole nother hour or two about so many fun different topics. But if people wanted
Oh,
to explore a little bit
absolutely.
more on what you do, where can they connect with you?
So the best place to find me is on Instagram. If you just search Mint Somatic Sexologist, you'll find me there. There's also a link that I've shared here with you, Shannon. And basically, if they just click on that link, that will show them all my offerings and the different things that I have. Primarily, I work online. Most of my work is either courses where I do very specific, in depth sexual pleasure education online. And then I also do one on one work for people who need a little bit more deep insights and deeper kind of like space holding. And then like once a year, a couple of times a year, I'll run an in-person retreat as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you being here so much and sharing your wisdom. I will definitely put those links down in the show notes, guys, so you guys can connect with her, figure out a little bit more on what she does. And if you found this helpful, even reach out to her and shoot her a message and tell her how much you benefited from it. So thank you again, Min, and thank you, listeners, of course, for being here as well. We will catch you guys on the next show. Bye, Min.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye.